afterward, what is it, aftermath? Aftermath?
Misgivings aftermath.
Yeah, right.
The Black Friday.
I came here today to get my dinner today. I still got to visit the kids later on. So it's kind of hard to turn down their food. Certain love energy. Anyway, I'm glad everybody came out today. And this brother did a phenomenal job last week. I actually couldn't, normally that doesn't happen to me. Couldn't wait to get back here. So that says something, says a lot. Last week he touched on the brain, and we're headed into the brain, dealing with the melanin and various other things. And brother, did you see the article on when they brought the Anubis to New York?
No, I didn't.
They floated Anubis from London to New York on a huge, some of y'all had to see that.
Coming up the river.
On a huge barge.
Yes.
Yes, and they did a ritual with young black girls worshiping Anubis, and I got all the pictures and everything. It's actually on the flyer for this class.
Yeah.
So, keep those flyers, those are collectors. I got flyers going all the way back. But anyway, we know that Anubis is the black, I don't know if you call it a dog, a jackal.
It's a black jackal.
Yeah, so that is the epitome of melanin, dealing with the underworld and the darkness and all of that. And I can't wait to see what the brother has to say about melanin. Probably, brother, right now I think you're probably the official master of that. Probably. But without further ado, I want you to give a big hand out to my brother Ifadishi.
Anubis, the correct name is Anpu.
Anpu, right?
Anpu.
Right.
And jackals are not naturally black. Usually maybe one in the litter or whatever.
Yeah.
And the black jackal always gravitates to be the leader of the pack.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, because you're thinking all jackals are black. Jackals are reddish orange, brown. Almost this color, like a wolf.
Like us, right?
Yeah. So they have that color, but the black one always gravitates to be the leader. And we get that concept 6 foot under, because if you just bury somebody 3 feet or 2 feet, the jackal's still gonna get you. Because he has one of the keenest smells in nature.
Right.
So the burying 6 foot under was so that the jackal or the vulture wouldn't get you.
Wow.
And then with the metaphysical and the scientific stuff, we can go all over the place with this stuff. So. But give a shout out to my queen in the back, my brother Terrence, the cameraman. And of course, without further, and Booker T has a son, a big man. That's really good. And of course, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the scholar, the teacher. It looks like a little metaphysics going on there too. I got to put you there too, brother.
Oh yeah, we're going there.
Hear it, give him a big hand.
And of course, I thank all those responsible for getting me here. To my brother Azaral and his queen, and to brother Mfudishi for having this sacred space, and to all of you for taking this time out of your Sunday to be here. I really appreciate it. The most valuable thing that we have is time, and where we put it is so valuable. And so I appreciate, the time that you spend to come here and the time that we have this fellowship, because it's key to our liberation, really, to understand this and to know this information. And when brother was talking about, my background in melanin, there are 2 DVDs I have here. The mental aspects of melanin and the physical and spiritual aspects of melanin. And I remember when I was first exposed to this by Dr. Richard King, I went out and got as many things as I possibly could to read about melanin and its importance to understand this. I knew something about melanin was extremely important, and I believe that, as our brother Dr. Carol Barnes has said, it is the chemical key to black greatness. As Richard King has written in his other book, Melanin, Key to Freedom, that's another aspect of it. Melanin is really key to understanding a lot of the things that we may not understand physically, mentally, and spiritually. And Malachi Andrews called it the mothership. He called it the mothership in the sense when you were talking about the funk, the mothership, the feminine mothership. And I remember George Clinton. He did a they did a Chocolate City concert in Washington, D.C. that I was there. For 17 hours, everybody, man, I couldn't get over there, brother, come out in the baby diaper. You know? The brides of Funkenstein, you know? Yeah. You know, I mean, for 17 hours at Robert F. Stadium, Robert F. Kennedy Stadium in Washington, D.C., they had this on, and I remember watching that spaceship come down, and the only other group I understood to have that kind of impact was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
With their concept of the serpentine fire, and you know, all of their pieces really was very key. The album covers. So that I realized that there was something, melanin, if we wanted to give it a broad understanding, melanin is the key. It is the ankh of the cosmic universe. Knowledge of it allows us to understand everything that exists, because melanin exists in everything. It takes different forms because of the nature of its environment, but it is in everything. From the blackness of the universe that we look up into, to the blackness of the waters underneath, to the blackness of the land, to the blackness of the organic life, and what we call inorganic life, although I don't think that exists. That's a whole other discussion. But melanin is key, and if you can understand this concept, and this is why, again, I appreciate my king and my queen for allowing me these 4 weeks.
Thank you, man.
And this is what I always appreciate about brother and sister inviting me to do these presentations, that, you know, like I was talking to you, brother, earlier, that this can't be done in one presentation. There are things that you have to understand that just can't be done in one presentation. Just what brother Mfudishi had added to the concept of Anpu, you know, and being buried 6 feet underground, and that was so phenomenal. That could be 2 workshops like this, just explaining that concept of digestion and about discrimination and about why it would be the guardian, why you see Anpu straddled across the coffins of those that have gone before, the concept of the guardian, and then even today we have the concept which they don't really understand, because that's a little weird, but they say that a dog is man's best friend. You see, well, my best friend is also the person that's going to guard my body when I'm in the coffin, but it comes from a different type of perspective. And so it becomes important that as we develop our understanding, melanin becomes a key. And when I was getting ready for this class, I said that before I even begin to get into it, because we have a lot that we have to cover today, because today is the spiritual. Today is spiritual melanin. And I've got eons. I have got to talk to you about melanin existing before existence existed. I have to talk to you about melanin being the beginning before the beginning began. So I'm not even talking about this couple of billion years we talk about. I'm talking about infinity today, and as it relates to melanin. And this is why, as an African people, I know that I'm not too concerned about what I see going on out here, because there's no way that you're going to get rid of blackness, because blackness will be here after lightness goes away. And blackness will be responsible for creating lightness once again. So even if everything were destroyed off the planet, even if North Korea, South Korea, Afghanistan, United States, China go buck wild crazy and decide to drop a bomb, I know that life again will find its root in the darkness of melanin. But I dare us to move north again. Keep your butts in Africa this time. Don't go out there into Eurasia and depigment yourself again, okay? That was a mistake that we made. We must keep ourselves within the darkness to remain the archetype of what we were meant to be. And when we stop being what we were born to be from a divine perspective, look at what we turned into. And look at what we have wrought on this planet because of the nature of what we have become. So that what I'd like to do is just talk to you about certain concepts, and this is a good time for the camera to really focus in, because I think that I'd like to start with our children and books that we can have. I'm going to go through the books now, very briefly, but I'm going to go through them just to let you see, and the DVD will further let you know. This is a book that's illustrated by Chris Hall, written by Beverly Dyson Crespo. It's called Melanin and Me.
Wow.
This is for children. This is the kind of book for children. And it talks about melanin and its properties and the different kinds of things. This is how we can introduce it to children. When we're talking about children, real young, from when we start reading to them, even prior to them coming out of the womb, this is the kind of book that we can get. Melanin and Me, okay? Another book is with a sister on the cover, When I Look in the Mirror, okay? And again, it's illustrated by Chris Hall, written by Sophia Graywolf. And again, this talks about when I look in the mirror, what do I see? This is for our children when we're dealing with concepts in melanin. Because this stuff that we have here, this is all for the adult population that can assimilate this information and then teach it to children. But how do we introduce it almost immediately to our children? Before they can even decode symbols, what we call reading, we can start to read to them from very young and show them pictures in a very positive light. You know, these are the kinds of things that we have. And this is the kind of book I used years ago when it first came out as it relates to teaching our children about melanin. Now we're going to get into some of the other pieces that I think are important. A sister that we really don't, well, I shouldn't say we because I can't say it for sure because so many of us know her from Baltimore, Maryland. Her name is Dr. Patricia Newton. And Dr. Newton was into melanin a long, long time ago. You know, I just happened to stumble upon her after the fact, you know. But sister has been doing this for decades, you know. Before I sat in front of Dr. Richard King, Dr. Newton was doing this. This is a book that she has developed. It's called A Handbook for a Melatonin-Friendly Lifestyle. Dr. Patricia Newton, okay? These are the books that should be in our library when we really want to find out about melanin and learn from grassroots, from the bottom up. You know, none of the heavier books that come down the line, although they have their purpose. These are the kinds of books that you can begin to get and put into your family libraries that explain. And of course, she has such a wonderful way of writing that she breaks it down for one thing. She also breaks it down from what I think is a very important perspective. And she also has books that you can further get more information about it and how deep you want to get into it. And that's another good piece. So this is an interesting piece to look at. Dr. Newton. And I'm just going to go through this randomly. I'm not necessarily going to go in any particular order. Here's another book for children. I didn't see this in there. Colors Around Me.
That was a little older, huh?
Colors Around Me. Yeah, this is a little bit. Yeah. You know, but it's a nice little piece. You know, for the children to see themselves in a positive light. It's also good for us who have many different levels of melanin within us on our skin. You know what I'm saying? Because all of us are not that blackness of Ampu. Some of us come in different variations, yet deep down inside of us, we are as African as anybody else. You know, and if we're going to do this scientifically, we have to really speak the truth on this. And we have to look at it from a perspective that is person-friendly and allows us to understand what the perspective is. Okay. We're not talking necessarily about folk that have been caught up in the Ice Age. We may be talking about people born of them after they came out of the Ice Age, with a strong combination of that well-melanated African self, without doubt. But the Colors Around Me talk about this as it relates to children understanding, you know, who we are as a people. And of course, Dr. Well, he calls himself Mr. Brilliant brother. I've never been into alphabets after your name, so I've never really cared if you doctor, masters, BA, BS, because it's all a bunch of BS. Melanin, the Chemical Key to Black Greatness. This was really one of the earlier books that I got hold of with Professor Kaba. And a lot of what you see as it relates to illustrations come directly out of this particular piece. This definitely should be in our library. You know, I mean, there's no doubt about that. And if you can get DVDs on Brother Barnes and see him speak, it adds to the dimension. But this is definitely a book that we need in our library. Interesting book. This was the 5th annual World Melanin Conference held in 1991 in Los Angeles. And this was ChemWar. You know, this is the consortium of Africans that came together. Dr. Richard King and Kaba Barnes, Malachi Andrews, all the early scholars came together and had a conference in California. It's called Melanin, Medicine, and the Mind. And I don't know how easy it would be to get this particular piece, but again, it's very interesting as it relates to the writers that were involved in this piece right here. Okay? And please, brother, if by chance you may not get a good shot, remind me and I'll just hold it up for you.
Okay.
Okay? Is this a good place to
Yeah, yeah, that's a good shot.
Okay. Here's an interesting book. This is more for a classroom. This is more for peoples of many different cultural backgrounds, not just African background of different complexions, but this is for a classroom that has many different peoples in the classroom, from Asians to Europeans to Africans. This is the type of book. What color are you? Very interesting piece, and that's by Darwin Walton. And again, what's also good about this, because I never turn off anything because of the culture. Because this is very interesting, some of the things they talk about as it relates to how do they tell their children about it. It sort of gives you another advantage to seeing how peoples of European descent deal with a lack of melanin, which I think is very important to understand. It's one thing to talk about it when you have it, it's another thing to talk about when you don't have it. We need to be into that conversation also. I take it all in, I take all information in, I take the sense out the nonsense and then I run with it. Okay, so this book has its value, and it has its value in what is the question when you don't have it? How do you approach it with people when they don't have it? And that's what's how do you approach children when they don't have it? You see, interesting.
With copper tone?
Please tell me.
Copper tone.
Oh yes, well they've invented those coffins that they call 24-hour suntan parlors.
Oh, right.
You know, I mean, but it's psychologically, it's just phenomenal. And then the things they say to each other. Oh, don't you look healthy? Like, what were you before? Interesting. And then,
are you sick? You look a little pale.
yeah, you need to get a little sun. Our sister, Dr. Jewel Pukram, she has a chapter on melanin.
She'll be here actually in February.
Oh, will she really? Where? She should be speaking here?
Yeah.
Fantastic, okay. Dr. Pukram, you know, vitamins and minerals from A to Z. You know, I mean, her pieces, you know, going along with Patricia Newton, because so many times the fields are dominated by males. It's important to hear the female perspective of it, because that's the base logic of it, you know. And so when you have someone like Dr. Jewel Pukram and our sister Frances Cress-Welsing, you have Dr. Patricia Newton, you get a chance to see it holistically and see it from a well-rounded perspective and get everybody's opinion in what this is about. What's good about this piece is that she talks about medicine and health as it relates to melanin. As a doctor, she can talk like that. Same thing with Dr. Patricia Newton. It's more than just melanin, it's the health of melanin. Dr. Richard King deals with the psychology of melanin. He deals with the spirituality of melanin. Sister deals with melanin from a physical perspective, the health of melanin on the earth as opposed to melanin in the heavens. So this is another good book to have in your library. And our brother, you know, who I give personal credit to turning me on to melanin in the first place. The African Origin of Biological Psychiatry by Dr. Richard King. This was a collection of a lot of the essays I used to buy in the back of First World Alliance, when they were on 145th Street, Black Dot 1, Black Dot 2, the Uraeus series. These were all collections and put into a book. There's also, when we talk about raw light, raw bright, we talk about the crown, the importance of the crown and the chakra system. This book also has an essay on that also. It's called The Importance of the Crown. The book that you spoke about earlier, brother. Why Darkness Matters. Why Darkness Matters. The concept of the power of melanin in the brain. That's what we've been talking about all this time. So if you were to ask me what book should you get for this particular 4-part series, this definitely would be it. This would definitely be it. And really, I was so taken back by these authors, Dr. Ann Brown and Dr. Edward Bynum and Dr. Richard King and T. Owens Moore, that I said, you know, we have to flesh this out. You know, we have to make this so we can teach this to our 5th graders and 6th graders and 7th graders. This is more than just us sitting as adults reading this. We got to break it down. And I think that one of my advantages in my educational background is that being a kindergarten teacher, I always have to take very complex issues and break them down for a 5-year-old to understand.
Is that Bynum? Bruce Bynum?
Yeah, Edward Bynum, Bruce Bynum, yes. And he has an essay in it, along with his book. I mean, that's a whole nother piece.
Yeah,
you know, his book on psychology.
What book is that?
Yeah, he's heavy.
This one here is Why Darkness Matters. It comes out of
yes.
African American Images.
Yes, okay.
A very, very good book. And, you know, again, like as I walk up and down the block, and I speak to brothers like Brother Azariah, and I speak to Brother Mfadichi, I speak to Brother Sekou, I tell them, get these books, because in these classes here, you know, you have a place you can come back to now and get these books and the DVDs, you know. But this is a very important book, Why Darkness Matters. It comes out of African American Images, the company that is run by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu out of Chicago.
Yeah, that brother is very heavy.
Yeah, Jawanza is very interesting.
Very deep, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very interesting brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Dr. Muata Ashby, I find, prolific writers. Very interesting. A lot of information out. This book, I was, you know, growing up I had very serious acne, skin problems. And I had to go to at one point in my life I had to really get it repaired and fixed. And I was going to the lady that was taking care of my skin. And we just got in a conversation of melanin, and she told me, well, you know, you'd be interested in a book, but it comes out of France, and it's an English book, and it's a French. It's in French, but it's translated in English. And she cut it out of the Aesthetic and Cosmetic and Cosmetologist magazine that came out every month, and she gave me the order, and I ordered it. And this is the book that came out, The Essential Notions About Black Skin, Morphology, Histology, Pathology, Cosmetology, and Makeup. They did this because in France, particularly in the fashion industry, they were finding that black skin absorbs makeup, and pretty soon it disappears on the face. That melanin draws that makeup, because black skin is extremely durable, but it's extremely dense. But when I say dense, I don't mean hard or heavy. I mean that it absorbs everything around it. It's a fantastic protector. And so in order to introduce African, and particularly African, but African Parisian women and men, but women in particular, into fashion, this gentleman by the name of Umberto Pierantoni did research, and he studied, and he brought some of the best minds from here and Cuba. Cuba is a very strong country. They deal a lot with vitiligo. A lot of the doctors that are on the forefront of vitiligo are Cuban doctors. Very interesting. And then he brought this book, and I have pieces of it, but he has pictures of what melanin looks like in the skin. That's the advantage of this book. The first half of it deals with melanin, and it deals with keratinocytes, and it deals with melanocytes. And all of this is really just to introduce you to melanin for you to be able to understand how to make makeup. This is not the study of melanin. But like I say, you've got to go everywhere and get everything to understand this. I don't discard anybody's information because of their cultural background or the country they live from.
That's
If
right.
you got something you can teach me, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to, because how you think they got in power? They weren't arguing with us when they were attending our class. They were absorbing that information, taking it in and using it to their advantage.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to bite that hand that's going to give me some information. And so this book is really, this was the first book I ever really had that showed me what it actually looks like, okay? And when we get into the skin down the road, when we have the pleasure and honor of coming back and doing the next Melanin series, it's going to be on the skin. And we're going to make a connection. I'm going to introduce you to concepts of why the brain and the skin are so important to understand. But this book, Essential Notions about Black Skin, is another great book on melanin. Okay. In the summer of 1994, I was walking down on 86th Street and I saw a book. It was in June. It was right before the first year of the Freedom Retreat with our brother, Attorney Alton Maddox.
That long ago?
And yeah, it was that long ago. And I remember it because I brought this book with me to study while I was up at the retreat. Okay, so that's how I know when it came out, and that was in the summer of 1994. And there was a big sign in the front of Barnes & Noble, the one on 84th and Broadway, and it said, "This book is a must before you get into the sun this summer." It was entitled Saving Your Skin. This had nothing to do with black folk
I
and
know,
melanin.
that's why it's down there.
This has to do with Europeans and melanin. This is warning them about melanoma. This is one of the most important books. Because like I say, it is important to understand what it is when you have melanin it is equally important to understand when you don't have melanin. There's two sides of the same coin here. This book, Saving Your Skin, was not written for black folk. This was written for peoples of European descent. That's why I got the Ankh in the book. It saved my life. As it relates to understanding melanin. Very good book. Saving Your Skin, written by Dr. Barney Kennett and Patricia Lawler. Very, very good book to have in your library.
Yes.
Please.
I shop sometimes at the farmer's market on 14th Street on Saturday, and I just stand around and listen to white people talk. And most of the time, their children, I'm talking like 5 and 6-year-old, already have cancer. All types of cancer, behind the eye, everything. And it's amazing that a child would, you know.
In fact, this book is saying that with them coming out of the Ice Age, and of course they don't say it this way. I say it this way because I understand history. They say it the way they say it because they don't really want to say it, but they speak of it as past environments. Okay, we know it was Ice Age.
Oh, okay.
See, when you talk about past environments, but they say due to climate conditions in past environments, that melanin, with them coming back over into the southern lands. See, this is why I say we have to get ourselves together, okay? Because they are being taken off the planet as we speak.
Yeah.
And the sun, which brought us in, you know that saying, I brought you and I'll take you out? Well, that's what the sun is saying to the human family now. I brought you and I'll take you out. Because what has become our parents, we are children of the sun. They are the children that came out of the children of the sun under the most harsh conditions. So that when you speak, brother, this book will explain to you that there are children that they are now able to pass melanoma through the fetus now. That it has been around them. So the worst thing they ever did was return back to the southern lands. They should have remained in the Ice Age, because the Ice Age was developed, they were developed conducive to their conditions in the Ice Age, not the sun. So even as they go through 4 seasons, the number 1 country that has the greatest amount of melanoma on the planet today by this book standards is Australia. Australia has a running slogan that goes through their country. It's called, everywhere you go, like when you're driving in the country, it has billboards up, it says, slip, slap, slop. Slip on a t-shirt, slap on a hat, and slop on some tan lotion. That's the national slogan in Australia. Because they don't belong there.
Right. Yeah.
And wherever they have gone, where they don't belong, they eventually will die off. It may take 500 years, it may take 600 years, but when you look at the span of cosmic history, 500 years is but a twinkling in the eye of the Creator.
So where do they belong? I mean,
They don't belong. They don't belong.
They don't.
They don't. They were an adaptation to harsh conditions. I'm not saying this through anger. I'm not angry. You know, and although it sounds funny and it brings laughter, science is very clear with what they demand. You know, science demands that plants be green. No argument. Okay? No argument. Plants were meant to be green. Humans were meant to be black. There is no polygenesis. There is no formation of a people outside of Africa. And what tells us clearly that that's the way it was is that you have Australopithecus robustus, according to the science that we see today. Australopithecus robustus, that is who they say was the first breakaway entity from the collective hominid pungid family. Australopithecus robustus. Australopithecus went through his and her changes, became Australopithecus gracile. Australopithecus gracile then formed into who we call Homo habilis. Homo habilis then became Homo erectus. Homo erectus, Homo sapien, and Homo sapien, Homo sapien sapien. The evidence of life being in Africa, and they tried every place they could. The last place they tried was Java, but Java was so African they were scared of that. But by millions of years, there is a separation between Homo habilis and Homo erectus. You can only find the first 3 forms of the human family in Africa. You cannot find Homo habilis anywhere in Europe. anywhere outside the African continent. And for millions of years, Homo habilis, the tool maker, was the only human form on the planet. Give or take a couple of years, he may have also shared the planet with Australopithecus gracile for a couple of centuries possibly. We don't know, maybe a millennium. Science will tell us that. Humans were meant to be African. Europeans were blessed by being able to depigment themselves. Africans were blessed by nature to be able to depigment themselves, to be able to survive in that weather. Otherwise they would have died, period. There's no place. There is no place on the planet for anyone outside of the African personality. That is the archetype. Science is very strict with their rules. We talked about the scientific method last week. Very strict. Science is not mean. It just got a plan. It's got an order and arrangement, and it's nothing derogatory. It's just that life comes out of the heat. And Glosier's law demands that any organism that is born to live must be in a warm to temperate climate. It's not personal. You know, you can't get in the club without your card. You can't live on the planet without your card. It's simple like that. That's just the way in which it is. And we have to understand this. And this blackness comes in different forms. Remember we talked about neuromelanin, we talked about pheomelanin and eumelanin, and we talked about skin melanin. Skin melanin the skin is the largest organ. We'll talk about it at the end of class. You can be light complexioned African, but very deeply melanated inside. You see? You can be very deeply melanated in the brain and still be a person of lighter complexion. We're not talking about those individuals. We're talking about Africans that had migrated into an ice age or in a cold climate, and then over thousands of years depigmented themselves through force, not through copulation. And we have to understand those differences. And once we get to the science of it, science is very precise. It doesn't play. It doesn't play, and that's why they can't tell the truth in science, because they understand that if they told the truth, they would understand the full story, and they would just say ice age instead of past time climates.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that it's possible that certain changes can be put in the test tube, because you will never have a control for them. So they cannot do any experiment to prove certain things. So they cannot have a control. So.
Well, melanin is uncontrollable. Melanin is such a mysterious concept that it can change its form once you think you got it. It will morph into something else. Melanin cannot be. That's why Dr. Carol Barnes talks about a concept of melanin. He gives you a concept of what a molecule might look like, but he doesn't tell you this is the melanin molecule. That is one aspect of the melanin molecule. But once you get too deep into it, it'll morph and it'll change.
Yeah, we're all shapeshifters, as so to speak.
It will change immediately. And I mean, it's just an interesting concept. The science that we know of today is not an exact science. We know that. We know that they don't know what they're talking about as it relates to their science. But we do know that there is a scientific principle that resurrects itself no matter how we see it, and that's the scientific method. If you apply the scientific method, then you must always come out with the same conceptual framework, or it will always remain a hypothesis, which is the first concept that you come, which is what the Kemites call the questioning. It will always be just a question. So that when we tell children that there are 7 continents, we define a continent as a large landmass surrounded by water, and then we say Europe is a continent. No, it can't be, because Europe is not surrounded by water. Geographically speaking, Europe is a peninsula surrounded on 3 sides by water. So that we see even there that what we say and what we describe, 2 different things. We say there's a concept known as the Middle East. But we have to teach that East travels north to south. So if Libya is in the Middle East, so is South Africa. By the nature of how we've defined north, east, south, and west. Yet when you get back into the discussion, they will change it simply Because I'm white. Because I am in charge and I can make a change. That becomes very dangerous for the human mind no matter what their cultural background. Because that will eventually destroy them, as it's doing as we speak. T. Owens Moore, his book, Dark Matters, Dark Secrets. Very interesting piece. Found it very interesting. Okay. The Science of Melanin, Dispelling the Myths. The second part of it really is the best part of the book. The second part of this book, the science, this was the first book I ever purchased by T. Owens Moore, coming out of Atlanta, Morehouse College. Good book. And then finally, Melanin, A Key to Freedom by Richard King. I began and ended with this brother because I have so much respect for him. Not because he is the ultimate and final word on it, but he was my first word for it. So, you know, I give him credit for being that person that opened my mind to it. And then all these other authors came to me. Francis Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers, is another book to get.
Does he have Anne Brown's book?
Anne Brown is coming out with a book. Well, Anne Brown has an essay here. I don't have it, but I believe she is coming out with a book if it's not already out.
It's already out.
It's already out. Do you know the title of Dr. Brown's book?
The Black Hole or something.
The Black
Something
Hole.
like that.
Okay.
I think she has a collaboration also with Finch and someone else.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it, it's the collaboration.
Okay, and do you know what the title of that book is, by chance?
Um,
Just so we can get it on the camera.
I have it also, but I just can't remember. It's
Okay.
Cosmic something.
Okay.
Dealing with melanin.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. But these books are books to have in your library. And then, of course, all of these authors have such a collection in bibliography that if you wanted to get deeper into it, you have a lifetime collection of books that you can get. And that's the one great thing about this piece here. Okay? So, I mean, these are the books that we're talking about. And I think it's so important that we do this, particularly since this is being put on DVD so that, you know, those that may not have access to this presentation will at least have access to books that they know. Because a lot of folks say, well, what books can I read, you know? And this is a chance. I always try to get the books in place because a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what I'm doing, these are not original thoughts of mine. This is research that I've done for close to, well, 1981, close to going on 30 years now, on melanin since I was first introduced to it. It was a collection of books, collection of ideas, note-taking skills, developing curriculum, looking at how we could adapt this, and taking the very best of what I felt could become a curriculum. And so what we're going to do today now is we're going to move into another concept now. And now we've looked at melanin from the physical perspective of the brain, the parts of the brain. And we looked at all the different parts of the brain, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, you know, the brain stem. We looked at the three brothers, or the three sisters, if you want to call them that, and we saw that we talked as it relates to the reptilian complex, which is the brain stem, the limbic system, which is the area of feeling, and then we talked about the neocortex, which is the youngest brother but the biggest brother, and that's where we think. And these three brains and these three concepts work together. And the higher level of thinking demands that those three parts of the brain interact with each other so quickly that sometimes it seems like you don't even know where the thought came from. That's what you do when you begin to really start to use your neurons. And we know that thinking, the brain is where the mind is housed and the spirit is controlled. And by that I mean the spirit controls things. And according to where you are and the way you think, determines when you look at the first three virtues of the ancient Kemites, the control of your thoughts, the control of your words, and the control of your deeds. You realize that thoughts are silent words, and words are verbal words, and your deeds are action words. But they're all the word. They're all invocations and evocations of who you are as an individual. And that we know that physically speaking, we have neurons. But we know from an invisible, almost to a point that it is the unseen, it is the amen of the brain, the unseen forces, that we have a synapse that is said to be an empty space between one neuron and another, and we know it's not an empty space, but that it is a very lively and a very important space upon which, from one terminal to another terminal, we know that there are neurotransmitters in this synapse that are guided and formed and directed from one ligand, which is at the end of a terminal, to the other ligand, which is at the other terminal. And that you have a two-way process of neurons sparking. And that is that you have the axon to dendrite and the dendrite to axon. And by that I mean you have afferon and efferon nerve impulses, which means that the afferon are your impulses that go away from you. And I think of it as axon, the A is away. So your axon sends nerve impulses away from you, in the direction away from the center of your body. And then you have the dendrite, which directs them to you. So you get your impulses through your one way, and you send them another way. And your hands and the bottoms of your feet are two external areas that become very important. That's why you have people reading palms and being able to touch your palms and the bottom of your feet, and all of that is all connected, because that's where all of your basic impulses go. That's where you have the laying on of the hands, and you have all of these other concepts that come from a spiritual perspective. But the impulses are very important because they are charged two different ways. One way you can charge an impulse is electrically, which means that it's just totally electric. It's something that's sparking that we really can't describe how that's happening. That's a spiritual force. And then you have chemical, which are physical aspects of how you can charge in your. And then there's a third piece, which is both together at the same time. Electrical will spark a chemical, and the chemical will spark an electric, and then you have from electric to chemical to a chemical electric or electrochemical reaction, which is at the apex of the pyramid, which goes back to Dr. Jeffrey's concept of the triangle. And our ancestors, in understanding this and charging up their concepts, they had on one side of the pyramid, they had nature. On the other side, they had nurture. And the apex of the pyramid was nature. Okay. So when you start thinking on these levels of triplicates, and Brother Aziel was talking about things coming in three, and the Trinity, and the unity of three, these are the kinds of things that are happening. So that what I'd like to do is begin the class helping us understand and look at the limbic system. Limbic system that deals with the four ventricles, which are openings in the brain. We talked about the early human being that began to form. The brain began to take different levels of change. And the early human beings had a slanted forehead. Before the neocortex was able to come out and really form itself, there was a slanted forehead that did not allow for the limbic system to fully open up and take its seat in the human mind. But when it was able to do that, it began to develop a way that it sat, and these balloon-like substances started to open up. And I'm going to show you we're going to revisit this at the end of class, that you had this concept of almost like the wings of a bird. The lateral ventricles. There are two lateral ventricles. The lateral ventricles come together and they create a third ventricle. These are your lateral ventricles here. These would be two of your lateral ventricles housed in this area of the brain here. That's your limbic system of the brain. Now that's the physical aspect of the brain. The mental aspects now are going to kick in, because in each one of these, the third ventricle that is here and the fourth ventricle that comes from the third, you will have things known as the choroid plexus. And the choroid plexus are bundles of tissues that produce what we call cerebrospinal fluid. And in the cerebrospinal fluid, you have 13 times, as science would tell us, it's probably even more. In fact, cerebrospinal fluid is probably another form of melanin in itself. But again, we have to study this to come to this understanding. This cerebrospinal fluid bathes your nervous system from head top to shoe stop. It bathes your nervous system. It gives it the necessary Christic oil. You know, when you hear of people talking about that Christic oil or that oil of life, well, that's what cerebrospinal fluid is. It's a clear type of liquid. It's crystallized melanin, in other words. That's what makes it clear. He's been put under a lot of pressure because, remember, the brain was under a very tight pressure at one time as it related to the human being. And once the brain started to open up, it gave room for this limbic system to open up, and the balloons filled up. The choroid plexus was allowed to produce this cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid being developed allowed it to bathe the body, and then the body began to get impulses. It began to get sensory perceptions of things around it. And it wasn't the eye, the ear, the nose, the throat, and the touch. It was what would lead to us understanding the physical aspects of the eye, the ear, the nose, the throat, and the touch. But it began to develop. Please.
Is that the same cerebral fluid that channels that the spermatozoa would enter in the sexual? Is that the same, or is it different aspects of that fluid?
I would say it's different aspects of it, because cerebrospinal fluid definitely it deals with your central nervous system, whereas your reproductive organ and glands have its own hormone that it releases. But I would imagine that the brain as an organ releasing the liquids, there are relationships with all of your glands. It's all the same basic thing. That, you know, so the hormones or the liquids that are released in your gonads or in your reproductive system is in relationship doing in that area what the cerebrospinal fluid does for the brain. Or what any of the other organ liquid, the gland liquids do for the body. It's all related somehow. But it's one essence of water, like the waters of Nun, but it has its own job to do in the body. So I would say yes, it is, but there is not. You would not say that the liquids in the spermatozoa would be cerebrospinal fluid. But cerebrospinal fluid and spermatozoa basically are two forms of the same original waters. Same way with blood, same thing. It's just doing its function in the circulatory system. Same thing with bone marrow, doing its function in the skeletal system. It's all the same thing. And once you realize that and you see that, then you realize that it's all the same thing. It's only it has a different job to do. Make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Excuse me, brother. What the brother just asked you? Is that you that liquid being formed in the gonad itself?
It is being secreted, yes. It's being formed and secreted in the reproductive system, in the glands. Yes, it is. It's being produced and secreted in the gland itself. The same way when you look at all the other glands and the hormones that are produced, they are all the same liquid, but because of where it's located, it's doing other functions.
And chemical content also.
Chemical content would be different because of the nature of where it's coming from, because its function could not be the same if it was chemically the same.
And where it's going also.
Exactly. All of it is all, but it is the same one liquid, it's just in a different place. It's like when you look at waters of the river, waters of a lake, waters of a pond, waters of an ocean. It's all water. It just, some are salty, some are not salt, some are fresh. You know, there's different, but it's the same water. But just because of where it is, because of what's inside of it, it has different responsibilities. So a lake is not a pond, but the waters are the same. The ocean is not a river, but it has the same function. And the same goes through our body. And our ancestors looked at it that way in a most wonderful way, because they saw that there was such a relationship, not just between the physical body, but in the heavens, because, you know, they saw star systems almost like organs and glands of the human body. So it's very powerful. So, once this started to move, and you started having your pineal gland, your pituitary body, and your optic thalami, you began to see things happen within these ventricles that would send impulses, and it would begin to make the human body wiser. It would make the human body be able to think and function in ways that led to the perfection of this organic life system, which is us. We are the masterpiece of the universe. I would imagine that I do truly believe that we did get involved in space flight, there's no question. But I believe that wherever we go in the cosmic universe, there are no entities that are more perfect than us. But there are entities that have perfected themselves better than us. Had we not been interrupted 2000 BC by the onslaught of our family that came from the Ice Age, we were on the way to another level. We were on our way, and the structures of ancient Kemet show that. They show that Africans were moving way beyond. We were set back by the onslaught of this warrior nation that came from the Ice Age. And so for me, there's no question that we were on our way. But I do believe that there is no entity greater than us. We are the masterpiece of the universe. There may be others that are like us, but none, by nature of who they are better than us. It's just that they weren't interrupted. You know, like I say to folk, just to kind of get you out of your thinking process, our sun is what's considered a small to mediocre star. Okay, imagine, and they say you can fit 1 million Earths in our sun. Imagine a star system and a sun that you could fit 250 billion of our suns in that sun. Imagine how immense that is. Because they exist. Suns that you could fit 250 billion of our suns inside that sun. And imagine a system that has 580,000 planets that revolve around it. And out of that, 250,000 have life forms like us on it. Just think on that for a while. And then we'll see how really insignificant the people who call themselves in charge are. Insignificant, totally insignificant. And that's why I say we need to be talking more about us and less about them. Because every moment we speak about them and not about us, even if it's in a negative form, it's still not about us and what we have to do. It's like being knocked in a pit and spending your whole day talking about who knocked you in the pit instead of spending your time trying to figure out how to get out. I mean, you can blame them all you want to, but you're still in the pit. And you're not going to do what you're supposed to do on the planet till you get out the pit. So let's stop talking about who put us in the pit, because we already know that. And let's just start functioning to get out this pit and begin to walk the earth and do what we're supposed to do. Because I'm finding that these are some of the concepts that will help us do that. And so as we move into this concept, I just want to introduce you to your senses, which become important. Basically, they say you have 5 senses. I believe you have 15.
How many?
15. And probably even more than that when you start combining through synthesis. Because you have senses that combine your hearing and your sight, your taste and your smell.
Is that what you call the inner ear?
Synthesis.
Or is that what the synthesis in terms of, you said it combines your hearing?
You can combine your hearing with, people can listen to a musical, like a piano, and they can tell you what colors they see.
Okay.
Okay, so you're blending your visual sense with your hearing sense.
Now, in terms of the hearing, the inner ear, would that be a concept of what you're talking about, the inner ear? Have you heard that concept? Or?
Well, the inner ear would be one of the senses, what you hear.
Okay, oh, so that's just one sense? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a sense.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
But when grandmother said, do you hear what I'm talking about? She wasn't asking you if you heard. There was another conscious
yeah.
hearing. She do you see what I'm talking about?
Right.
That wasn't about, do you see? That was something deeper.
Right.
That was a spiritual. That was connected by your mental. Okay, you know better.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm talking about? So she was asking you to think about it and then spiritualize on it. But she was only using your sight because she felt you could understand it.
Right.
And so these are the kinds of things. So that's why I say there's 15.
Okay.
Because with your visual sight, you also have a spiritual sight, and you also have a mental sight. With your taste, you have a spiritual taste, and you have a mental taste. When someone's talking to you, you say, man, that don't taste right to me.
Right, right.
You're not talking about the taste. You're using your tongue to be able to discriminate a taste.
Yeah.
And you're saying that mentally, that don't taste right to me, you see. And when our brain started functioning with this cerebrospinal fluid, we became aware of our senses, and our senses became part and parcel of what we began to evolve as the world around us. We started to use that around us. So our sight became very important, our hearing became very important, and that's why really when you stop and you think about it, many of our senses are based in our head. Touch is the only one that is not, but that's because skin covers your entire body. But the senses are very important because that's what's going to begin to percolate your melanin. That is, whether it is your skin melanin, whether it is, which is in your skin, or whether it's your neuromelanin, which is in your brain, or whether it is your you or feel melanin, which is in your organs and glands of your body, and then combinations of them all. Okay, and so.
So let me do something there for you. Can you feed your senses?
Can you what?
Can you feed, some of the senses that kind of overlap on a Venn diagram?
Can you over? Yes, you can. Oh yeah, you can do all sorts of. You can do anything you want to with your senses. That's the beauty of melanin. And sometimes melanin does it for you whether you want to do it or not. Because melanin also is a co-pilot. It's an automatic pilot that it takes over after we start acting silly. Or the idea that when we feel such pain, have you ever felt? Well, I don't know if you have, but there are people who feel such pain that they pass out. Okay, well that's your hormones inside of your body telling your body, man, we have to shut down because we can't handle this pain. Our body can't handle it, so it shuts it down. You pass out. So yeah, you can combine a lot of different things. In fact, there are some people, like if you saw, like for some of our ancestors who were being branded, when they saw that brand coming towards them, they just passed out. And they woke up after it had dried off. I mean, that's the power that you have. The human body has that kind, and it's how in control your mind is over the entire body politic. How much control do we have? And when I hear folks say, well, he made me do this, or she made, what kind of control do you have over your body? You've got to have control over your body, and to do that, you've got to have that ability to be, that entity, the netures, the collection of your netures has to be in control of what's going on. Otherwise, you're going to be tripping up. And melanin allows you the ability to perfect it so well that you can control who you, and that's what the high priest and priestesses, that was the truest sense of life on the planet, was to be able to get into control of that. How was our time, brother?
Give it up for the brother. We'll take a 5-minute break. Come back.
I've been working. I've been with our children for a very long time. 31 years. I've been with them long for a very long time. But in the educational area and in the development of our relationship with our children, and as we watch them grow up, a lot of times as the adults we tend to, and I'm not going to say this across the board because it's not true, but there are times I've noticed that some of the elders put the children down. Put down rap, put down hip hop, put down the way they dress, and I have a sense of what I'm looking at because I've watched it happen over time. I remember I started teaching when Rapper's Delight came out, 1979. I remember it very clearly. I remember African Bambaataa up in the Bronx around Weeks Avenue, selling his cassette tapes out of the back of his car. I remember seeing him. Okay, I remember seeing him back and forth from going to work, because I worked on 174th and Weeks Avenue up by the Cross Bronx. And because I've been with our young people and because I know how this has grown, and because prior to them, having watched the Black Panther Party and SNCC and other organizations, I've watched the morphing, the give and take of our culture. And I've always come from the perspective that before I put our young people down for what I'm listening to, I'd rather attempt to give them something to rap about that I think I'd like to hear. You know what I'm saying? So I take total responsibility for what I see happening. And that is why I try to reach out to brothers such as African Bambaataa, such as Lord Tawfiq, Zulu Nation, Black Panther Party, the Castle Hill Boys and Girls Club. Wherever children are, I'll be there if you call me. And attempt to at least shape, as it relates to culture, something. But that doesn't negate the fact that I would be remiss if I did that for everybody else, but did not do this for my own children, for my own family. And I've been bringing Heru with me. Heru was born the year that the Freedom Retreat. He was born in January. Our first Freedom Retreat was in July, where we brought the young brothers up for 2 weeks in Young City. And so I always know how old it is. I always know how old a retreat is by how old Heru is. I brought Heru to the Zulu Nation. In fact, Heru bought a DVD from Brother Azariah on cartoons, on black cartoons. You know, I mean, that was over at the National Black Theater. I brought Heru since he was, when they used to have the retreats up at Peg Leg Bates. I used to bring Heru. Heru was in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was in the months.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the months.
I would go from doing a presentation in one of the cabins to wheeling Heru into the cafeteria and feeding him. He was in a stroller. That's how far back. And so much of the things that I've attempted to do in my life, I've tried to implant in him, and also step back from the fact that I know he has his Lil Wayne, and I know he has his Dipset, and I also know that now he has J. Cole. And so I stay away from trying to shape them. I just try to add something to it. And part of what I do, and one of the things that makes me pleased, is that part of me has rubbed off on the brother as it relates to some of the things that he's rapping about, the conscious rap, and the things that he's attempting to do. And what I've tried to do over time is try to expose him to folks such as yourself. Because on one end, when I'm telling him the importance of conscious rap, I also want him to be exposed to people who want to hear conscious rap. You know? And you can have all that other stuff, man, that's your life, but also there's a conscious piece also. And so I bring him with me where I go. He was able to do something for a number of places, and I felt that since he was coming with me and hanging out with me, I just wanted him to share with you one of his pieces. So that for our young people, and I wanted it on DVD, maybe he can even download it, put it on YouTube, you know, and have folks see what, you know, yeah, you can have your J. Cole, you can have your Dipset, you can have all that, but you can also have conscious rap coming from young people who are still in school, who want to do good in school,
Yes, brother, yeah.
and at the same time can rap and can be all the things that you want to be. And so I try to present this concept, not just from where I'm coming from, but also from where our young people are coming from. So I would just like to ask my my future.
All right. Your man, come over here.
This comes out of concepts of the Shabaka stone and the waters of Nil.
Live here is one of my comedic minutes. I call it ASAP minute. My father did his comedic minute, so I translated it my way of doing it into my ASAP minute. Hotep, know thyself, nobody else. Back to beginning, even from then we was winning. That's where it began. Underground railroad, I'm coming for sand. Speaking from Egypt, men fight text. Black power, then I'm on to the next. 2,000 years later, 710 BC, revolution, they wanna be me. Before Christian ever, we was doing this forever. By Shabaka, he be your partner. Origin of the universe, take the lies, put two in the hearse. Shabaka stone, I'm autonomous, I do it on my own. What the history of three philosophies, we gon' get it please. How it came to be, seemed the same to me. This the Big Bang, around consciousness is where they hang. Order and arrangement, please no complaining. Use the stone for astronomy, I'm telling the truth, they wonder if you conning me. Written by our brothers, from sister to mothers.
This is being played in WBLK, Buffalo radio station. This is on the air up there. His minute and then my minute, back to back.
This is the ASAP minute part 2. Waters of noon, call it in the universe. We found it first, Ptah came at the first hill, then a tomb, call it into being. Now I'm seeing the truth with the proof. African perspective, we gon' live, credit they gon' give. Nun, water and space, they fill up the place. Her and her head, infinity, infinity, let's get it into me. Cut and coquette, darkness and light, this time I got it right. Amen and Amenet, hidden and revealed, you know this is real. 8 essence just in my presence.
This is our future.
All right,
This is
brother.
all of our future. Yeah.
Let us finish.
Right, brother.
Everybody got his things to say.
Oh, go ahead, brother.
I have my tapes, so I have both of them. I have both the written lyrics
Okay.
of the Comedic Minute and the CD, which has 5, has one of the songs. The first one is Fair Black Man, where I did over Nas and Diddy's beat. I forgot the beat, but it's called Fear of a Black Man, and I'm just like saying all the fears that the world has on the world today, that they have on black people. And then the 2 through 5, I have my father's Comedic Minute. The first 2 he did, I have his first one, then I have mine after it, and I have the second one, and I have the second one after it.
Young brother, explain to us what the minute means. What does that mean?
Yes.
The Comedic Minute,
Yeah.
it's just like the philosophy of Egypt and the different things, the cut, the almanac, and like the whole point of like knowing your consciousness and where you stand in the world today.
And to add to what Brother Heru said, when I went to speak up in Buffalo in September, and the program director at WBLK asked me if I would do some comedic minutes, because what they do is that intermittently during the day, they'll play something conscious.
Oh.
And so I went into the studio. When I went up to speak there in September, I went into their studio and I taped maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 different aspects of comedic, particularly the Shabaka Stone. Starting at one point, moving through. And what I did was, I did about 8 of them that are being played. Maybe once every 2 months they'll change. At the ASCAC conference, the program director from BLK came down to the city to be part of CCNY's conference. And at that point, I had recommended to Heru, think about what you're doing now. You want to get the word out there. You want to start to move into this area. You want to be seen. You want to be heard. Here's an opportunity. I spoke to the brother. The brother said, look, I don't mind. Just have the brother. So what he did was that he took my comedic minutes, because the brother sent it to me. I put it on DVD. I gave it to Heru. Heru listened to it, and then out of that, he came with his ASAP. So what I'm saying from a historical Shabaka Stone perspective, he then converted it into a rap perspective. And my comedic minute, his ASAP minute, my comedic minute, his ASAP minute, and there's 3 more he's working on, because I have about 8 of them all together.
By the next time that I come here, I'm gonna have the next 2.
So on and so on.
And so on and so on. But I'm trying to get our community and our people to understand and get a sense of that this is here.
It's good.
You know, and for us, you know, where does it fit? Well, it fits when we teach our children something that they can, let's stop getting on their case. If we're upset about what we're hearing, maybe we're not telling them what they need to hear.
And we gotta support them.
And that's the bottom line. Because that let brother know that, hey man, Pop is right. It just worked, you know? So it's good, it's good. And I appreciate your support, and let's just keep on doing what we're doing. Encourage our young people. And I'm encouraging like when your young ones came, they were doing their thing. I'm encouraging our young people to become a part of this, because that's what's going to get them to come with us.
My 7-year-old now, hers is not printed yet, but she has her book and walking around with it in her hand. We haven't even bounded it up yet.
Okay. Can she hold it up for us to see?
Yeah, where is it? Where's your book at?
You know, we have to do this for our young people, to show them that this is viable. That's when they'll come with us. We say, well, why don't our children come where we go? Well, are we directing our world to support them? And I believe sincerely in that. I believe sincerely. There we go. Look at the sister got her pizza. See, this is our future. This is our future, and I'm very serious about giving it to our young people. You know, and these are the kinds of things I think that we're looking at that make this happen for us. And I'm encouraging our young people to make this happen, to come out and share time with the elders that are here, you know, and go to places where we are, and to make that happen, if they're part of the process, it will happen. You know, and these are evidences of it happening. We just got to keep it going on. Got to stop putting them down. You know, because I remember my time. You know, I got nothing to say about Little Kim because I had my Tina Turner. And before that, there was a song called 60-Minute Man. Remember that one? That go back to my parents' time. 60-Minute Man, where he broke down the minutes of what he was going to do.
60-second man.
You know?
Now it's 2-minute brother.
Okay, 2 minutes, brother. Oh, watch out. So you know where we're coming with this now, right?
Coming, yeah.
Come on.
No doubt. It's something else. Okay, it's all right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to focus now. We're going to move back into the circle of time. You know, what I would like to do is I would like to talk to you first and foremost about the concepts of the development of our people and what they were able to do. And when you're dealing with the human mind and you're dealing with natures, what I want to focus on with you as we go through this comes out of Dr. Richard King's concept. And what we're doing right here is that the mummy of Pharaoh Tutankhamun was placed within one coffin and then enclosed within 2 successive shrines, which are the sarcophagi.
Thank you, brother. That's what I was talking to you about, that I was watching the other day.
Yes, yes,
And I told you that I fell asleep.
yes.
It was that.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay, you're welcome.
Yeah,
All right.
same way.
The surface of each of the 4 were covered with elaborate tableaus or pictographs or pictures. The right side of the second tableau of the right shrine contains a scene of a serpent passing rays of light into the forehead of the first of 6 human figures of King Tut. And that would be this here. Okay, that is what you're looking at when Dr. Richard King is talking about the Uraeus and the rays of light. Here, from the Irta, or from the cobra's pineal gland, rays are being sent into this first Pharaoh's pineal gland. Now go back to the brain and go back to understanding what we're talking about as it relates to melanin. Melanin being activated because we are children of the sun. And that the rays of light from the consciousness of Irta, or the sun, or light and heat energy, is being passed into the front Pharaoh. Okay, who is a mummy, by the way, a Sa. In front of him, you have the bird. Okay? The first Pharaoh. Here, the second Pharaoh, you have rays of light being passed down to the pineal gland. Here, you have rays of light being passed down to the pineal gland. But once you get to this point, there's something miraculous that starts to happen, and that there's a conversation amongst the stars. In other words, by this time, you have raised yourself up into the heavens, and you are in fact starlight. This is what melanin can do when you activate it within. Okay, and this is King Tut's tomb. Okay, there's no way they could not have understood certain concepts of not, they may not have called it melanin, and that's not important to them, but they knew about it. They knew there was something that activated that chakra. However, what's very interesting about this concept, going back to this, which is what we have to break down in understanding, I think, concepts of our people, is that it is likely that King Tut's tomb, with its 3 successive shrines enclosed within a quartzite sarcophagus, are a symbolic metaphor for the enclosure of the spirit, soul, and mind in the physical body. Death, decay, and resurrection represent the release of this sacred trinity from its material vessel. Okay, it's the release of it. But that release can not only happen after you've died, but it can happen in life. Have you ever had out-of-body experiences? Okay, or have you ever had experiences that are unexplainable from the material world that you're coming from. Okay? African folk knew how to deal with that. Unfortunately, we have been told by others that we're out of our mind when we think like that we're hearing voices in our head. And we've allowed other people who don't have those voices or those abilities to talk us into believing that we don't have it. And if we can believe we don't have it, we don't have it. You see, someone else's illusion can become your reality if you believe it. But here's what I think is important. This is, hey brother, what's going on? What's happening? I had a nice conversation with brother on Blog Talk the other day. Yeah, we had a good time. Symbols and signs, we have to understand the difference. This is the African mind. This is also the African mind, but this is fundamentally the Eurasian mind. Eurasians can't think like this. Okay? And so the symbol, just as we explained it, there are 7 different people use the same one symbol to represent 7 different things. Like, we could have the sun. The sun represents light and heat energy. It could represent a falcon. It could represent Heru. It could represent heat. There are 7 different things one sign can represent. 7 people can look at the sign and see the same 7 things. That's us as a people. See, because I'm trying to break down the way in which we look at the natures. I'm trying to get into the science of the natures. To understand that when we look at a dog, and as Brother Mfudishi spoke about discrimination and the ability to smell and all of those deep gifts that different animals have. Birds have the gift of sight. And sight then creates a concept of intelligence or insight. Then you have cats that have agility, that they could jump out this window, right, and land on the ground and scatter away. Agility, they can move around, they can do things, they can skirt, they can move and not be hurt. That's where they get the concept of resurrection from, cat having 9 lives. You see? And so our ancestors took symbols in nature. Okay? Remember, nature, nurture, nature. Remember the Trinity. You have nature, you have you nurture the nature, it becomes a nature. Native Americans had what's called, in honor of misgiving, they call them totems. The bear clan, the owl clan, the wolf clan. You belong to a clan. That's a totem. You belong to the priest of Amun. You belong to the priest of Ptah. And out of that, you took on the attributes of that particular nature. You nurtured that nature through the nature.
So what's the nature? What that mean?
Nature would be the combination of taking an essence of nature and building an understanding and consciousness of the God-given gift of that particular essence in nature, and then creating a symbol that allows you, that when you see that, it evokes that thought in you. You know, like, for instance, folk that are exposed to Kemet, right? And, you know, when they see, let's say they see a feather, right? We think about ma'at. We think about justice, reciprocity, righteousness. Okay, other people say, that'll make me, I can tickle you with that. Okay, because that's their perspective. A feather makes me tickle, okay? Or a bird lost a feather, but the way, what symbolically represents things to them is different as it relates to black people. Now, all of us in this room, we say feather, ma'at, because we've all been schooled in black gold. We've all been schooled and listened to brothers such as Mfudishi and Samaj and Azariah and Blue Pill, Red Pill, myself and others talk about this concept. So our centerpiece mind comes out of this idea of, here's 7 of us in this room, that could have been 14, 15, 20, whatever, looking at a feather, and all of us can say, well, it could represent justice, reciprocity, and we all could agree that that's what that feather represents. When you deal with the Eurasian mind, no, that's a sign. That's not a symbol. It's a sign. And all 7 people can look at 7 signs, and it all means, what else can you tickle yourself with? Well, we can use... Okay, that's the way the mind... Now, African folk can do this too, but the depth of African thought when Dr. Jake Carruthers and Dr. Asa Hilliard and others talk about African deep thought, they're saying that all of us can be on one plane looking at one thing and coming up with the same conclusion. At the same time, we also can look at the world this way. But this is a sign. This is the world of signs, not symbols. And that's why signs and symbols are so important to understand the difference between the two, because there is a drastic difference between the two. And so when I look at natures, the way in which I attempt to flesh out this concept of natures is that you can see something and all of us can come to the same conclusion in it. When you get around Europe, they say, no, that's not what it means. It means this. In other words, it's got to mean what they say it means.
Right.
Because in their mind, they can't get out the box and see anything else, not to mention that 7 people could see the same exact thing 7 different ways. Please, brother.
I was at a train station and a European saw me holding the sign. He said, I know what that is. So I didn't say nothing. He said, yeah, I know what that means sex. That's a sex sign.
Well, it could be.
I just said, peace, have a great day, my brother. Because it wasn't used to me trying to break this down to him. Because if he saw it as a sign.
Yes, what it was.
Not a symbol that has a deep thought to it. He didn't have no deep thought.
Yes.
So I was not going to try to interfere with his day. Real good. This is sex.
That's right.
He knew something.
Yeah, that's right, because he wasn't going to pay attention to nothing else during the day, whatever you told him that was. You say, I saw this guy. But, please, brother.
No, I was going to say, like the same thing about the cross. The cross, like back in Kemet.
Yes.
It represents, you look at on the pyramid and the wall, it represents the 4 elements of nature.
Yes.
Air, fire, earth, and water.
Okay.
Which really mean, in reality, mean a few. Mean a few. A few. Air, fire, earth, and water. A few. That's why he took, to build a nation. A few. Air, fire, earth, and water. So that's why he took to build a nation. So when the beasts invade us, you know what I'm saying? So they took it, then the meaning changed. So they have a different meaning for us today. Today that the cross represents the death. You know what I'm saying? Because you find it in the church, which were built to crucify the mind of our people when they took off the chain. That's you see the cross is on the cemetery and in the church. So both of them are the same house. The church and the cemetery. That's why both of them has a cross. One is to kill the mind, and the other one is for the physical body. So the symbol changed completely. The meaning.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, brother. I want to go back to this for a minute. I told you we were going to do this. I want to go back to this. I want you to understand how deep our ancestors were. And to help you understand how much they knew a long time ago. Not to celebrate that they were the first, but that they knew it. That's the key, to know it. I'm not going to try to compete with anybody else about who knew something first. I could care less. What's important to me is that their thought was so pure and so powerful. Remember we said that the ventricles, which is really a very important part of the spiritual essence of an individual as it relates to mind, body, and spirit, that it looked like wings. You had 2 lateral ventricles that came down and formed the 3rd ventricle, that came down and formed the 4th ventricle. In this book also, Dr. Richie King talks about the diadem that was found on King Tut's tomb. Okay? Now, look at what's going to happen as this diadem, in fact, I'll just keep that there. Now, let's get to his head itself. And what you're going to realize is that, in fact, what they literally did was that they recreated the ventricular system on his head. And that you had the 2 hemispheres on either side, which is, this right here is going to divide. Here you're going to have the snake come up with the irita, cobra in the front, the pineal gland. Remember you saw the other one sending light into the mind. Well, here you're going to have this concept. This right here is on the middle of his head, which separates the hemispheres of the brain, which are the lateral ventricles. Here you're going to come down here. This is going to be the third ventricle. This is the body of the bird that's on top of his head. And here's the tail, which is the fourth ventricle. Okay, so our ancestors were very much aware of brain anatomy during their time and understood the importance of this symbol as it related to the limbic system, which was, as Dr. King says, the body, which would be the third ventricle, was the seat of what he called the seat of the vault of initiation. The depth of that human part of the brain was there, and that is really what began to have the brain really begin to focus. Now, the bottom line is, here's the top of King Tut's head. Okay, and here you have the double snake. So you have a snake on one side, and here's a snake on the other side, coiled. Do you see like that? And this represents the two ventricles of the brain. So they literally had a piece placed on his head and then mummified his head to make this come up, and then put the diadem across the head to represent this limbic system, which is where the source of light, heat, energy, and the ascension of the human mind was. And it was in the manipulation of the human mind of melanin in cerebrospinal fluid that brought the concept into play that allowed the human brain to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. And if we studied this and began to develop a process by which this should be done, which I'm probably very sure that Brother Mfudishi does in here. You know, the meditative pieces, when we come in here, you always hear music playing. All of these are forms to activate the movement of that pineal gland. And like we said last week, when you try that, you can feel like a tickling inside of your head. Well, that activates. That's where it's called the Shittite. That's where all of your senses come in center physically, and right there. And when you that sound, what you're literally doing is that you are percolating that physical entity in cerebrospinal fluid, and that's why that sound is the meditative sound. We have to form and then we spell it O-H-M, but it's really a sound you're dealing with. When you deal with the letter M, you're dealing with the owl, which has come down to us as supposed to be wise, although the owl is not the most wisest of birds. But the symbol of what the owl can do, when you talk about symbol, what are the two things that an owl can do?
360.
It can turn its head 360 degrees, which means it can see all angles of something.
You can see it now.
And it can see at night. In other words, it can see truth in darkness.
But, you know, I did discover what the most intelligent bird was.
Yeah. Well, that's Heru. Nobody can beat Heru.
The most intelligent bird is the crow.
Interesting.
The crow.
Interesting. That's it.
It actually uses tools with its beak. It picks up twigs and dig holes and builds stuff.
Tool builder.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go briefly through this. What's my time like, brother?
Well, we're just about there.
Just about
you
there.
Want to take some questions or?
We have until 4.
4. Okay.
We have until 4. We have to just be up by 4 so I can set up the next class.
Till 4.
Okay, what would be
Or like a
comfortable?
quarter to 4.
Like my last word comes at what time?
Somewhere around a quarter to 4.
And leaving for questions?
Well, I guess you would start that at 3:30.
Okay, I know the time. See here, Rob Wright, I developed a lesson plan around this, teaching this. Biology, brain anatomy, spirituality. It's extensive in nature, but it's looking at physical evidence, primary sources. Because I'm into primary sources. I don't play games, and I know we'll be attacked. I know they have attempted to attack. That's why I'm not invited places to speak with them, because I bring my primary sources with me. Okay, this is King Tut's tomb. Okay, that's a primary source. What's there is there. Okay, nobody came in 1820 and bought this. Okay, you can't say someone else did this. This is primary sources to me, and I believe in primary sources because primary sources shut down the room.
Right, true.
It shuts down the room and there's no more argument. You lose by forfeit. Because when I come into a room with my primary sources and I present my information, I may put this up and talk about this. And then I'll stop in the middle of my presentation and I'll ask them to prepare their primary sources. And if you can't present primary source, this discussion ends. You're not prepared for this. You gotta have primary sources, otherwise you're talking he say, she say, and we're about scholarship here, not bullshit. I'm about scholarship. That's some bullshit. So that the primary source becomes very important as a tool, and as an African people, we have all the tools we need. These are primary sources. These are discussions that show, these brothers were talking pineal gland here. They were talking about the front of that head. There's no argument about what they meant. Where's your primary source that's gonna, let's talk about it. So that really, the reason why I put this up, I just wanted you to get a sense of where your pineal gland is located in your brain, and where it would be if you looked at the front of your head, and then looking at the diadem of King Tut and showing that there was a direct correlation between the cobra, where the pineal gland is in the front of your head, and where it is actually physically located. And so that in our discussion, this is what we're going to be looking at. And the other piece that I just wanted to show you real quick, because I really want to get into another aspect of this concept, because we're building on this now. We're building on this ascension into spiritual knowledge and wisdom. In other words, Delphonics had a song, "Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time?" Yeah, I want to blow your mind. Because when we all end this up, that what you're really dealing with is your seventh chakra in the first place. And your seventh chakra is what blows your mind. And so Delphonics went far off the course. So, what I try to do is coming out of here, I attempt to number what you're looking at. To be extremely specific with what you're looking at, numbering things from 1 to 19. And number 1, you're looking at a serpent. Number 2, you're looking at King Tut's figure. Number 3, which is above here, is the star. 4 is the next pharaoh. 5 becomes the next starlight. I believe 5 is here. Okay, 5 is there. So what I do is I number everything to explain what it is that you're looking at. But on every one of these columns, you're looking at a human-headed hawk. And of course, you know that the hawk is related to the falcon, and that's insight, and that is travel. In other words, what they're actually saying is that, well, this is my interpretation, I should say. My own personal interpretation. As I've looked at melanin and as I've looked at it, accessing what it is that's the key of life or the key to freedom, which I consider to be melanin on Earth. You transform what is a mummified into the ability to become a hawk. The hawk and the pharaoh are all connected. They're two symbols, but they represent one thing, and that's the ascension of consciousness. In the beginning, the cobra assists in the concept going over the head, and you'll also see this tool, which is in the opening of the mouth ceremony, well, I should say feet, really, but it leads to an opening of the mouth concept. But these are really feet moving. These are 2 feet. All of these are feet that you see, which tells you that there's an action-oriented thing going on. This is my interpretation.
Repeat that again, about what you said there.
You see the feet?
The feet.
The feet with the legs.
Yeah.
Okay? You're looking at feet with legs.
And don't that mean?
He's correct. It means action. It means that motion is taking place.
Yes.
Some form of transporting from one station to another station is happening.
It's sort of like a wave effect. Is that what you're
Well,
talking about?
that's energy. This is just, they can both mean the same thing, because all energy travels in waves.
Okay? So you have an action-oriented concept going on. Something is going on in this. And this was the beauty and the genius of our ancestors, because they could make something come up. That page is alive. It's moving. But you have to interpret those feet as telling you something's moving, which goes back to the symbol. You have to understand the symbol. And you see, we as an African people have been convinced by those that know not. And we have, like Wade Noble says, power is the ability to define someone's reality and have that person accept that definition as if it were their own. You see, and that came from our Legans. When we were captured and enslaved against our will, and brought to this part of the world, they literally took our symbols, right, that we knew tight, and what they did is that they cut them. It's called disassociation, where, like, they do that a lot in psychology, to disassociate bad feelings that someone has, that they've had a traumatic experience. In a lot of post-traumatic disorders, they do that. They disassociate that painful experience and associate it with something good. Okay, so that you don't feel that. Like, if somebody did something to you horribly while you were sitting on a piano, that piano would become a symbol of pain to you. Every time you saw a piano, you see pain. So what they do is that they disassociate that memory of a piano with possibly making maybe the bench of the piano something good. And then you reassociate, or you associate that next, like that. As African people, when we were brought here, they disassociated our ligands. They disconnected our connections, and they reconnected them into something else, which changed our symbols. So now when we see a heart, we don't think of the judgment scene being waved. We think of Valentine's Day. Think about what I'm saying. They've changed the symbols. Okay? Concepts of symbols that we have different thoughts for, they've disassociated that. Now what we have to do, when we now are exposed back to our culture, we now look at the ab, we look at the heart. We understand what the heart is. You know, when we look at the Shabaka stone, the heart is explained differently. And so now what we are doing is we are disassociating the memories that we have back and connecting them the way they were when we had them, when we were amongst ourselves in Africa. And the more we do this, the more disassociation and association occurs. And that's what it means to know thyself. Okay. Now, just to wrap all this up, I just want to show you something interesting. You know, the Ipet et Waset, or what we call the Grand Lodge of Luxor, there is a DVD called Magical Egypt. And there's a book called The Temple in Man. I have a lot of respect for R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz. I have a lot of respect for John Anthony West, but they just don't get it. But that's all right, because we do. So I don't need them to explain to me what I already know to be true. Please, brother.
With some authors, specifically the two you just named.
Yes.
Sometimes I can't tell, because I've read a lot of their stuff. Sometimes I can't tell if they just aren't sharp and some of their scholarship needs to be tightened up, or if they're very sharp and they're trying to put out the shaky scholarship to lead people down the wrong direction. So I'm just saying, like, sometimes I can't tell whether the person just doesn't know better or they're trying to specifically lead us astray in some of their material.
Well, I believe that both Schwaller de Lubitz and John Anthony West both know that if they ever told the truth, they wouldn't sell a book.
I think they hint. I
Yeah.
think they do a good job.
I think West tries his best to put a lot of stuff in there.
Well, West is a student of Schwaller de Lubitz. But if I can just ask you, my sister, who went to John Anthony West's presentation, and I believe you asked him, or somebody asked him that question about the Africanness. What did he say?
Oh, he said that,
But besides the fact that he didn't want to go into that.
no, he said something very un-African. I forgot exactly the words that he used, but it was very un-African.
Yes. That's good to know. Because it does answer what you're saying.
Yes.
The bottom line is this. From my readings of John Anthony West, from Serpent in the Sky, I believe that the ancestors are forcing him to say things, but he's not claiming where they came from.
Got you.
I don't need him to say it was African. I already know that.
Yeah.
So I don't need his verification of something that I have already verified, along with some of the greatest minds that have walked this planet. So that...
excuse me, brother, but you have to understand also, his followers are mostly white folks.
Yes, exactly.
You know, when I went to that presentation, there was only 5 people of African descent, and 3 of them were connected with brother and friendship, including me. The 3 of us. After that, you know, there's 2 other people. One of them, you know, there were 2 other people. One of them was doing volunteer work. and the other two were from somewhere else. And I would like to see white folks sitting there talking about Kemet. They know a lot about it. And I can say that because I see that know what they were saying, I know the same thing, symbolism and leadership. So I was shocked to see that that the public was mostly.
But you see, there's something that we know that goes beyond all conceptual concepts, and that is that if you really knew, you'd be afraid not to tell the truth.
But he know the truth though.
But he is tangled in his ignorance. Joel Augustus Rogers said that the most brilliant scientists become absolute fools when it comes to race. And I see John Anthony West that way. I see Schwaller de Lubitz. I see the legacy of Kemet. If you're not going to deal with the realities of it, I don't care about your racial persuasions, I don't care about your cultural affinities. If you're not going to tell the truth when someone asks you a question as to were these peoples of dark complexion, curly hair, wide nose background, and if you're going to play a game, you don't know the truth. You're playing with it, but you don't know it. Because you would be concerned with, because as long as you don't embrace it, you will never know it. And so that these individuals are playing games as it relates to this. This was built during the 18th dynasty, going back even to the earlier dynasties. This isn't even an 8th dynasty creation. This was improved upon for centuries by Africans. This was a focal temple that had its lodges across the planet. The Ma'akal, or what we call Mecca, that's one of the grand lodges. That's why the Kaba is one of the black stones that was in this remnant that we today call Mecca. That was a lodge. When you come to South America, there are lodges. You go to Central America, there are lodges. You go to China, there are lodges. You know there are pyramids in China?
And in Japan.
And in Japan. And these are all representations of the Osirian drama, when the metaphor of this great king leaving Africa and spreading knowledge and wisdom across the globe. This is the Osirian drama.
All those lodges mentioned in my book.
Okay, please say it again.
All those lodges are mentioned in my book.
Okay.
And we got some of the pictures of the pyramids in the new book that's coming out from Japan, and even Japan has underwater pyramids that they discovered.
Sister, you want to say
Long You got a
My
long
book is basically all about pyramids.
Oh.
Different kinds of pyramids.
Okay.
Sphinx and Great Pyramid and pyramids that come from China.
That's fantastic. Wow. See, now when you...
finish that thought, because you was getting ready to give me something.
Yeah.
Wow, so much stuff hit
I
there.
know.
It hits the whole room at the same time.
Refresh me, man. What was my
I
last
was getting ready to
sentence?
go into the temple, swallow the Lubitz, and
Yes, oh yes.
The temples are all over the planet.
Oh yeah, there are temples all over the planet. However, this was probably the parent lodge with the relationship with the Ibid Sud, or what we call Karnak, which give or take was maybe 2.5 miles away, and it was connected. These two temples were connected by ram-headed sphinxes. And you still can see some of them outside of the temples, but now current civilizations have cut into the streets and things like that.
But no, I was just there 4 months ago. They made all those people move. And they're connecting the two temples back. And they have 2 rows of ram head,
Good. Okay.
Haruim Aketis, all in place.
Okay.
They have been storing some, and then they're going to reproduce ones that were damaged and were not. But the avenue is already done. Now they're just putting back in. It's paved, and you'll be able to walk from
They're
one
nervous. They don't know who's gonna pop up soon.
Well, I believe that they're being forced to do this by forces that they don't even know. I honestly believe this. From what I'm looking at, and that's why I tell us, don't worry. It's happening as we speak. Don't get caught up in the hype out here, because the forces of oppression are depending on you not believing this is going to go down. It's happening as we speak. For Sister to speak out the way she did, to speak of it tells you, look at whose hands this is in.
Right. That's right. That's right.
But also look at the hands of the guiding. Okay? So, we have difficult days ahead. Dr. King was right. But we are getting to the promised land. I got good news and bad news about it. We all gonna get to the promised land.
Bad news first.
But from what I'm looking out on the street, a lot of us ain't gonna make it. Because if your mind is there, like Erykah Badu said, maybe next lifetime. Not this one. Because you could be, because, and for whatever reason, no blame, no accusations. It's just that the way in which things have happened, certain of us have not been placed at the feet of some of the teachers that have brought us to this level. For whatever reason. For whatever reason. It's nobody's fault. It's just our good fortune.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? The Grand Lodge of Luxor. Upon studying it a little bit closer, we see, looking at the work of Naim Akbar and Wade Nobles and others, we see that there is what's called the sevenfold soul. There is the Ka, there is the Ba, there is the Kaba, Aku, Seb, Puta, and the Atmu. Okay, this basically is how they break it up. In Nile Valley Civilizations, there's an essay, I think, by Naim Akbar. In Kemet and the African Worldview, there's an article that talks about the sevenfold soul. They call it the septenary soul. In other words, the soul manifests itself 7 times, and our ancestors developed what we call rites of passage programs to welcome every spirit in the human to come forward. When you look at the Grand Lodge of Luxor or the Ipet, you can see that those systems were built. This comes out of Charlotte de Lubit's book. That's why I say, he's got information there. We just got to know he's talking about black people. Don't depend on them to say it's black people. You know it's black people. Okay? And so upon birth, newborn...
Excuse me, brother, I remember what he said. He said that no, they are not only black people in Africa.
Yes, they're not only black people in Africa.
Okay, that the pharaohs, that the pharaohs, were not only, were not purely the black people. There was no variation in the population.
Yes, yes. Interesting. Interesting. That's like saying America had multicultural presidents. Okay, because we have one now that's African American. You know, oh yeah, they, when they invaded, but they didn't do anything to bring the civilization. They did not bring wisdom and knowledge into Pharaonic Egypt. And the evidence of it is that, look at when the only real times that anything great happened in Kemet was when black folk took over. And nothing new was ever created after the Old Kingdom. Exactly. Everything else was only attempted replications of the greatness of an ancient people, and the Old Kingdom was built on an even more ancient kingdom. See, we have to study this for ourselves. And so that at the age of 2 to 3, there's the Ka and the Ba. See, you're born with your Ka and your Ba. When you're 2 to 3 years old, when we say this is the terrible twos, they're really the terrific twos. Because after you've been told all your life what to do, how to do, and blah, 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 all of a sudden now at this age, there's a word that comes into a child's vocabulary.
It's Europeans. No.
Say again? Yes. No, it's terrible. For Europeans, for us, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. Because the very word that we've been waiting for them to say comes out of their mouth all the time. Why? Why? You answer it, why? Well, why? Well, why? If you answer that question enough times and you get to the root why, they'll stop asking you why. If you don't address that spirit, they will ask you why for everything and don't trust you when you actually give an answer. But you should have said that before. You don't find out. Upon 7 to 8, which is pre-reasoning, going into reasoning, you are born. Now you have the Ka, the Ba, the Kaba, and the Aku. 12 to 13, the Seb and the Ptah is born within you, and this is the rite of passage, which is reproduction. Ptah tells you, Ptah coming from Ptah, is the creator of creations. Amongst men, they now have fertile sperm, and young ladies now have fertile eggs. This is when you can physically reproduce yourself. It doesn't mean that you're mentally prepared. It just means that nature has said you can carry a child. Upon 18 to 19 years of age, now the Atmu is introduced, and that is your ability to reproduce yourself. In other words, a lot of what you should have learned and become conscious of by 19, you should have that in your head. And by then, you are now ready to bring forward children, which comes forward the Atmu, or which is a derivative of Atum, which is the word. Now the word, you can reproduce yourself, please.
Yeah, what you're saying in Hinduism, they call it Atma.
Atma, okay, interesting. Please, my sister.
Are these the 7 that were on the King Tut's tomb?
No, there were 6 pharaohs on King Tut's tomb. Yes.
Oh, okay.
This now, we have moved into another area as it relates to the human body and the development of the human body. And the reason why I've done that, because we're going to wrap it up now. And now what we're going to do is we now have to take that physical body, this body, and now we have to look at blending the melanin, the mind, the body, and the spirit, and now we have the chakra systems. Okay? And the concepts of the growth of the human organism as it relates to where you are in the covered temple. Now, of course, this is not to scale. This chakra is bigger than the temple. So, I mean, but it basically is telling you a story as it relates to the chakra systems, from your root chakra straight to the one that blows your mind. That opens up your crown. See, that goes back to Dr. Richard King's story of the crown. And when you take your crown off, when you take this part of your head off, where the pineal gland is, when you take that off, that is what's going to impact. And now it's going to charge you, because the pineal gland is not where it ends. All of these combined now come forward, and now it goes beyond your head, and it joins that is where you're headed with this. As you're moving this way, death, decay, resurrection. It all comes from life, looking at the sevenfold soul and having your spirit addressed the way it should. Having your spirit addressed as you should now, you are now moving through the 7 chakras that are now going to have you join the cosmic reality. And all of this that we're talking about, every single thing we're talking about, including the stones that built this temple, including the quartzite that built the temple, the body of Tut that went in the temple, and all of the things that are involved in the chakras, all of this has to do with melanin, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And when you address the systems the way they should, as we move into this next level, there's numbers of things that we'd like to do. And so that the next time that we come together, I'm going to focus on skin. I just would like to read something that comes from Dark Matter's Dark Secrets. And it's written, this is by T. Owens Moore. And I just want to connect. Please, if you can turn the light on.
Yeah, right.
Please. And this way you can get a better sense of.
That might be it. Yeah, I think that's it right there.
Okay.
That's it?
Okay, well then I'll just hold it like this. Just to read this to you real quick, is the skin is of the utmost importance to human life. It encases all the vital functions of the body, and it is in direct contact with the external world. The brain inside the cranium guides the internal mechanisms of the body. The skin functions as a large organ that can physiologically respond to external stimuli. We're talking about the senses now. The skin can respond to neurochemicals released from the brain and also generate these chemicals locally in the skin. There are biochemical mechanisms that exist in the skin that appear very similar to many processes that occur in the brain. We'll talk about that when we talk about 7-dehydrocholesterol, when we talk about vitamin D, the absorption of calcium. These are all the relationship that this skin has. And what he's saying is that the skin is a large brain. And now he says brain and skin similarities. Tyrosine, an essential amino acid, is the first familiarity that can be made to connect the brain and the skin. In the brain, tyrosine is an important precursor molecule for the biosynthesis of neurotransmitters. In the skin, tyrosine is an important component in the formation of melanin. The enzyme conversion of tyrosine is the critical factor which will determine the formation of neurotransmitters in the brain or melanin in the skin. In other words, it will decide whether we're going to develop neurons or skin cells. This is what melanin is deciding as you are coming in contact with those essences that will promote the creation of melanin. The skin, as a large brain, can secrete hormones from specialized cells. In a similar way, the brain secretes hormone. Melanin in the skin is a hormone released from cells in one area of the body to stimulate cells in another area of the body. The brain in our skull is the most complex entity in the universe. Although melanin in the skin appears to be a simple layer of pigment, the epidermal melanin unit is rather complex, which will break down into the 5 units. Stratum corneum, stratum luciderm, stratum spinosum, and the stratum basale. It's very important to understand this. This is what we need to be teaching our children in biology class.
It is.
You see, because with understanding this, you can understand the function of the body. Okay, and this is what's very important. Just to close this out, the cellular car, the way in which the melanocyte is formed, it looks like this. It physically looks like this in the body, like the outstretched hands of the car. This is what it actually looks like. And in his book, he has a picture of what this looks like. What's important to understand, and to wrap all this up, is that the next phase that we're going to get into as it relates to melanin is skin. Okay? After that, we're going to get into the different parts of the body. So look at what we've done. We've spent 4 sessions talking about neuromelanin that is in the brain and the central nervous system. When we come back together again, we're going to talk about skin melanin in the largest organ in your body, which is like a large brain. So we're going from the brain to another type of brain that functions almost the same way like a brain. And then with the decision of what the skin is going to do, whether to send it to the brain or to the body, the third phase is going to get into your respiratory system, your excretory system, your reproductive system, your circulatory system, the digestive system. All of them are being channeled and fueled by melanin. What we've done now is dealt with melanin in the brain.
So, help me out here. Are you trying to say that since the skin, melanin can operate like a second brain?
Yes.
People who are melanin deficient
Yes.
are missing that brain and can't feel or perceive some of the things that we can.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. And
I mean, it has nothing to do with race or nothing. I mean, it's not there.
No.
So they can't even feel or perceive. Half, like when a sister get happy in church and go into tongue from
They
here
can't
one note.
understand it.
They can't even understand that.
Well, even in basic conversation, if you hang out with a lot of white folks, you'll notice the main difference from hanging around them and us is that, well, one of the main differences is they can't get the unspoken parts of the conversation. So where I don't even gotta tell Red Pill something, like we can see something in the room, look right at each other.